All right, so our next presenter, Mark Watts. Really, the next three presenters are probably some of the biggest impactful people on my coaching. If it wasn't for Mark Watts, I wouldn't be training people. Definitely wouldn't be training athletes. First day working for Mark, he came storming in from coaching football, threw a warm-up sheet at me and said, take the 60-person football team through a dynamic warm-up, and left.
We're developing grit.
There was a lot of grit going on in my head. Luckily, there was a student intern, and I turned to them and I go, what the fuck is a dynamic warm-up? Where is the football team, and where the hell do they warm up? And then he came back in and goes, what in the hell are you doing? But 3.5 years later, that was the best choice I had ever made, working for him. Sanders, he's here. If it wasn't for him, I probably couldn't put one foot in front of the other. He's the one that got me into lifting. He actually caught me when I tried squatting with the barbell the first time because I fell over it. All right. So these are four of the most influential people in my life. The other being Lou, who's not here. But, I mean, these next three presenters have all changed the way I think, challenged the way I think, and largely due to Mark Watts.
Thank you, Nick. Everybody hear me okay? Right. I figured if you could hear it for the round table, I'm sure you can hear me up here now. I've been able to watch Nick grow as a person and really develop into somebody that I would want my daughters training with, right? And again, with him and knowing Claire, meeting Claire when she was a sophomore at college and seeing them develop, and I had the privilege of actually marrying them, right? So if you know anybody who want to get married, just Chipotle gift card. I'm good. I'll hook you up. I'm an ordained minister, everything. But this is such a great thing to be a part of because, again, just like Nick said, there's people here, for Greg Perini, for somebody who's won so many national championships, because, again, Greg is one of those people that will always give the credit to someone else and always take the blame himself. And I am always nervous talking in front of my colleagues because, again, you are my people, right? And again, the reason why you became a coach wasn't to make a lot of money and work sweet hours, right? You're coaches because you're the most selfless people there are, because you give up so much of yourself to help others. And whether that's in the private sector or for a high school or university, it doesn't matter. I'm sure if you got into this, everybody says, well, I want to open up a gym and I'll just train NFL players and figure competitors, and that's it. And then you realize that that's not what it's about. All the things that has to happen before that. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is all the things I've done wrong, and I'm going to try to sum those up in a way that hopefully you can use that in your own situation. Anytime I ever read an article or listen to someone speak, I always think you have to have three things in mind. Number one, what is the problem? What is the issue? The reason why sometimes people don't read articles does not have anything to do with them or how well it's written. Is because it's usually about something no one cares about or it doesn't apply to them, right? Number two, why am I qualified to say this? Why am I qualified to speak it? And I don't care if you're writing something that you've only competed in one meet, you've only been interning for a couple months, you're still qualified as long as you say how you're qualified and, hey, listen, these are the things I learned, these are mistakes I made. So again, what are you talking about? Who are you and why are you qualified to talk about it? And then provide some kind of solutions or takeaway points. I think that's really important to know that. I think nowadays everybody has a podcast, right? And most of the people have podcasts so they can just talk. And they can just get with their buddies and just talk about things and rant and rave. And the problem with ranting is that it never solves anything. So I'm going to talk about a couple things, especially with the career, because again, everyone wants to get into strength and conditioning, right? And sports performance, health, fitness, helping other people, but sometimes we lose track of why, and then we get discouraged and we sidetrack. So hopefully I can help you out with that too. So be patient with me with this. So I've had an opportunity after coaching. One of the things that I learned was that when Dave Tate gave me an opportunity to become the Director of Education at Elite FTS, one of the things I learned was that you're able to see, you heard the acronym right, or you heard the analogy, see the forest through the trees. I think sometimes when you look at your day-to-day schedule, what you put into it, a lot of times you don't have the time to stop, sit, and really think and look at the bigger picture, right? Sometimes you don't have time to look back at what you could have done better because, again, you're always looking forward. And sometimes we have blinders on when we're talking about coaches or we're talking about trainers. Raise the hands real quick. Private sector coaches, private sector trainers. Anybody here working for a university or high school being paid directly by the university or high school? So you're not, I know you're working with high school, college athletes, but okay, that's good. That helps me a little bit. So when I say coach, I'm going to assume that means trainer. That assumes that means everybody, right? Because we're all kind of in this together, what we're doing. So I think it was a really humbling experience to be able to see and talk to other people. Sometimes you don't get an opportunity to do that. So that's why that experience helped me to be able to kind of reflect and, in retrospect, some of the things I could have done better. All right, so this is kind of the learning target that we're talking about, right? How do we help the people we want to help? And at the same time, that's probably a run-on sentence, right? I would probably mark that down with one of my students. But how do we help? The only way we can help other people is to make ourselves better. I mean, that's really what it is. Because all that you have, the only difference that you're going to have from now till 3 months from now, right, is the experiences that you get and the people you learn from. That's the only way you're going to change. And I think sometimes if we can help ourselves become better at those things, then we can help the people around us too. Get the best version of ourselves. And that's probably pretty cliche. All right, I'll talk to you about this. Now I know you're looking at this monitor and you're like, oh, what is this? Right? Humility, empathy, authenticity. To me, everything else is based off of these. And I know what you're thinking, right? All right, Jeff, be humble, right? Care about other people. I get it. Be true to yourself, whatever. All right, it's over. But I think what we have to understand is that these components are what every other quality as a coach are all based on these things. You can't have integrity as a coach without first having empathy for others. All of these things are the building blocks for everything else we're talking about. So I'm going to talk about not just why these are important, but again, how we develop these as people, because I think these are more important than just about anything else. So for me, after 20 years of coaching, it all came down to this. A lot of other things are just cliche, or they're things that I didn't control. And I'll talk about those a little bit later. Right? Sometimes we're so worried about the product that we don't understand or worry or focus on the process. And I think we'll talk about that today. So, I'm talking about these three things. This is kind of the definition that we went through as far as humility, as far as empathy, and authenticity, right? Being true to yourself and some of the things that you need in order to make this happen, right? Humility is probably one of the most, and I think people think humility means meekness or weakness, and I think that's furthest from the truth. Empathy is not sympathy. It's not feeling bad for the young man or young woman who shows up 5 minutes late, but it's understanding where they're coming from and why, and figuring out how to come up with a better solution. And then finally, authenticity. I think really when we have, as coaches, we are almost forced to have our marketing side and our double life, who we really are side. I think when we basically take those two, if you take a Venn diagram, you talk about the person that people see and think we are and the person we really are, the closer we get those two circles together, the more authentic we are as a person, as a coach. And that's going to lead to better relationships with your clients, better relationships with your athletes, and essentially more clients and more for your business if you're in that private sector. All right, so I'm always going to have a career. When we talk about sports performance career, I'm going to have a little bit of twist on. So I'm going to leave some of these questions as well as talking about why people get into the profession. And again, let's lump private sector and collegiate high school all together, right? Why we don't make that connection sometimes. Why we don't have a satisfying relationship sometimes with the people that we're entrusted to train. And again, why do people close their gym down after a couple of years? Why do people take that job in business when all they ever want to do is be a personal trainer and help other people? Why do people leave? So we'll talk about some of those things and how it kind of, those building blocks come in together. So I hope this is something that I think this can lead to can help everyone in everybody's category. The difference between someone in the private sector and someone that is being paid by a university or a high school is not necessarily the job you do. It's not, your intentions are not different. You're there to try to help you. The only difference is who's paying you, right? Are the people you're helping paying you directly, or is the university or high school? Now, it can come down to motivation might be a little different, but at the same time, when we're talking, we're going to bring that all together because, again, the intentions and the why should always be the same. All right, so we'll talk about each of these things. The first one is going to be humility, right? There's a couple quotes that I have there. I think, again, with the C.S. Lewis quote, it is, again, it's not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. It has to be others, me. Right? That's why you got into this, right? That's why you got into this. I'm sure there are trainers out there that make a lot of money. There's coaches out there that make 6 digits. But when they first started, that's not why they got into it. That's not why they started, right? And I think we all understand that. Okay, so this is something that is a model that I came up with. I think when you look at maturity, and you look at people and coaches and maturity, I think that this is the model that I was thinking about for a while. And this is especially when I first started teaching. And again, basically the 4 steps to maturity. And when it comes down to humility, and again, how I feel about other people's. And you'll see how this connects to empathy as well. When I'm looking at how I'm concerned, how I feel about other people. There are some people that are adults that still have not gone past that stage. Look at their Facebook statuses and that'll probably prove it, right? There are some people that are worried about how they feel about things, that their opinion means more than anything else. When your opinion means more than connection, when you try to win the argument more than you try to win the person, that's when you're not going to be as authentic as possible, right? And that's where humility comes in, right? Concern how others feel about me. This is a big one, right? One of the things you see in fitness and sometimes, in that fitness industry, and I remember talking to Dave about this, when you look at fitness, and you look at that Instagram fitness, there are a lot of ego, and there's not a lot of self-esteem. It's there, but there's not a lot. And when you get into coaching and teaching, when you get truly helping other people, those roles has to be flipped, right? You can't survive in collegiate coaching with a huge ego, with any ego. It's always got to be the ego of the school. I got a chance to listen to Dennis Lehane speak. He is the writer. He wrote The Wire. He also wrote The Departed. He wrote Gone Baby Gone. So he's a screenwriter. And he wrote these. And one thing he talked about is that his ego had to be so far down the list. But the ego of the show, The Wire, and if you ever watched TV, I mean, it's one of the best shows ever. But the ego of the team, the ego of everyone had to be high. So your ego of your gym has to be out of this world. But the ego for yourself, that's where you have to keep it in check. And all of a sudden now you get to the point how I feel about myself and then how I feel about how others feel about themselves, and this is why you're in the business you are in. All right? So again, a couple of things that we're talking about is, again, knowing why, right? And everybody talks about it. Again, I think it gets a little bit cliche with knowing why you do what you do, why you got into this job in the first place. And secondly is, again, making sure that when you get into this, some of you are more established than others. Some of you have opened a gym and you have a gym now for multiple years. Some of you are still learning. Some of you are still in school. Some of you are still learning on what I need to do next. But understand what you have to do in order, and what you're willing to do in order to be a part of the profession. I think one thing that happens with a lot of us is that I don't think we understand. The biggest thing that has happened with sports, with strength and conditioning in general, and I hope that Nate can attest to this, is that it is the one profession that you may need a master's degree in order to qualify for a volunteer internship. Look, if you go to footballscoop.com, you look at some of these websites, CSCCA, that's how they list it, right? Must have experience. Like, wait a minute, you're not paying me, but I need to have experience, and I need to have a master's degree. And I think because a lot of it has come down to supply and demand, right? There are way more coaches out there than there are jobs. when it comes to strength and conditioning. And I think that's what we have to make sure that we understand when you're going through this, making sure that's really what you want. I always ask everybody that we had an internship program. We had about 11 different schools, and I have some former interns in this room right now. And one of the things we ask is that, we just ask the same things. Like, listen, you want to be a strength coach? Okay. Do you like money? No, okay. That's got to be one of those things. Like, do you like sleep? All those different, kind of quirky questions you ask them. But the thing is, why do you want to be a strength coach? If you want to be a strength coach at the local high school, here's what you do. Volunteer at the local high school. You're a strength coach. But the question is, if we're honest with ourselves, it's not about that. It's like, no. I want to make a living, right? I want to have enough money to have a mortgage and I want to make a living being a strength coach. I want someone to pay me to be a strength coach, or pay me. I want my gym to pay all of my bills, right? So again, that's a different thing to ask for. So I think that's one thing that we just be cognizant of, is that understand why you want to get into it. If you truly are trying to, again, if you're trying to be a college strength coach, that's your aspirations. Understand how difficult it's going to be. I tell people all this: you're going to have to volunteer. You don't have experience. People are not going to pay strength coaches, because even if you're established, even if you own a gym, you're going to have trainers that are coming to you. You're going to have people that might internship with you. A lot of private sectors are having this kind of collegiate internship model, which I think is good, but I think we got to be careful in how we implement these internships. And a lot of people are, they're going to ask, if you really want to coach at the college level, is it because you want the logo, or do you really want to help? You think your skill set helps that age of athlete the best? You work best with a large group of individuals, right? That's the one thing I think we have to be honest with when we ask those questions, is why do we want to get into it in the first place? And here's the last thing. There's 3 things I'll talk about, again, because it comes up a lot. And that is, if I want to get in this field, if I am going to be a personal trainer, right? Again, do I need a degree? Do I need a certification? Do I need an internship? Well, you don't need any of those things to open up your own gym. I would probably go and get an MBA instead, right? And again, just because you can get a degree in exercise science doesn't mean you should. If you are going to be a personal trainer, that's going to depend on the gym that's going to hire you. If you're going to work in, if your passion is you love CrossFit and that's what you want to get into, that's the kind of environment you want to be in, I don't think you mess with any of these. I think you save enough money, get your L1, and you're done. I don't think that the degree really matters. I was on the board for the NSCA, is actually the CSCS. I don't know if anybody here is CSCS. I let mine run out, like some people do. But if you're CSCS, there will be a hands-on component with that. So you have to go and you have to actually take a hands-on, have a demo. That's the biggest knock on the CSCS. You might have to study for a couple months, but at the same time, you might not know how to actually perform and lift weights. So here's a couple things I'll say about degrees, I would say about certifications, I'll say about internships. Number 1, with a degree. Do I need an exercise science degree or related degree to be successful coach? No. I would say no. Understand what an exercise science degree does. I know there's my friend Trevor Cashy, who got his PhD in molecular biology at like age 23. He's one of those people that make you mad smart. But the best thing he said to me is, listen, an exercise science degree doesn't mean you know how to exercise. It means you know how exercise works. As Nate said, it's your BS detector. You know that you can't have your athletes max out before a competition day, not because no one else does it, because you understand the science behind it, right? So people say, again, I learned more from working at a gym than I did in 4 years of my exercise science degree. Well, part of that's your fault, right? Someone had said that they learned more getting a certification on how to deadlift than they did in 4 years of getting an exercise science degree. Well, you went 4 years of college, you wanted to be a strength coach, and you didn't deadlift once? Like, so it's put it in perspective. That is, and if you can convince somebody that you are more qualified as a strength and conditioning coach than someone else that has a degree, then that's a different conversation. Then you would probably get into some kind of marketing to market yourself to convince them otherwise. The thing about certification, listen, certifications are never going to get you a job. Right? I was fortunate, I had 5 different certifications at the same time, because I was fortunate enough to have people that would help me pay for them. They're never going to get you a job, but it can keep you from getting a job. Does that make sense? Right? So it's the same thing. That certification will make sense when you are in a court of law. If you have an athlete that was injured, right, that certification would mean something. But when it comes down to it, it doesn't mean you're a good coach because you get certified. But what you have to do is you have to convince everybody else that you don't need that certification. Right? And again, and it's all about context as well. It depends on what is the context of your job. Right? If you are not going to be a college strength coach, I don't know if it's worth it to go get a CSCS. Right? One of the best certifications out there is the CSCCA, the College Strength and Conditioning Coach Association. They have their own. It's pretty intense. It is really, at the end of that, I think that you have to prove that you can have the qualities to be a good strength coach. But for most of the population, it doesn't make sense because it doesn't have the same context. So just be cautious about it. If you ever have any questions about that, just let me know. And the same thing with the internship. I had a young lady that called me that she wanted to do an internship when I was at Denison. Right? She was the athletic trainer there. She wanted to do an internship at Denison. I said, yes, we'll have you over. We'll get you signed up, whatever. We'll go through the process, right? She said, well, I can't do it if it's not paid. My response was not very tactful. I said, well, if it was paid, if it was a paid position, I wouldn't be talking to you. Not to be mean, but you understand that if you own your own business, can you really afford to pay someone to teach them how to be a trainer? Can you pay someone to teach them how to be a strength coach? And whether it's fair or not, that's just the reality. So you have to convince somebody that, listen, here's all my paid internship I applied for and got accepted for. Here's my unpaid ones. Well, yeah, if you have a paid internship, take it. The problem is with most people, that's not the case, though. Look at the advertising, right? There's all kind of advertisements for coaches at private facilities a lot of times. College people college strength coaches aren't advertising their jobs on Facebook. It's just not the reality. So ask yourself, why? Do I want to get into this for what? So again, that's one of the things that you have to be. I want to just go over this because I think it goes back to being for humility. This is the one thing that I think there's 4 types of coaches, and I think we talked about this. Nate had talked about this. David talked about this, about being in your lane. There are those coaches that, for whatever reason, try to make the simple complex because it becomes more about them than it does their athletes. That's the biggest mistakes that I had ever made. I spent so much time trying to convince my athletes. I tried to sell the athletes that had to work out with me anyway about how my program would help them, that I lost sight of what was really important, right? I tried to make sure that, listen, I interviewed Bob Aleo, who is he's the director down at North Carolina State. And the one thing he says is that coaches sometimes don't talk coach anymore. We as strength and conditioning coaches sometimes talk about data, and we're trying to be sports scientists, and we lost sight of how to communicate with coaches. Coach, we're going to do this because your athletes are going to jump higher. If they really don't trust you, then there's no research you're going to give them that's going to convince them anyway. But if they do trust you, that's all you need to say. I spent so much time trying to talk about, again, just the dynamic method, effort, just the application of force to the ground. And again, I don't care. Is this going to help me on the field? Yes? Okay, I'm doing it. So I think that's the one thing that, again, we want to be number 4, right? Make these complex things, right? You know it's complex. You don't have to sell yourself. You don't have to sell your program. You already got the client in your building, right? Or if you're at a college or high school, they're stuck with you and you're stuck with them. There's no more selling right now. It's just about getting better and improving, all right? So again, just to give you a little bit of, again, I'll probably forget about 3 things that I was supposed to talk about. I'll probably have to go back. The second thing is empathy, and I think this is what our society probably needs more of. And again, it's about connection. That first quote is one of my favorite quotes by Bill Bullard. I have no idea who Bill Bullard is, but I see that quote, and I think it's one of the most important quotes. Brene Brown's awesome. She wrote a book called Into the Wilderness, which, yes. And again, talk about the difference between empathy and sympathy. She has a couple of videos. If you look up, there's a couple of like animated videos that makes a lot of sense. But again, this is us. This is our opinion on how we should train, how I should train, how I do things, my opinion. And again, I don't have enough invested. I'm not going to comment on things I don't know about because I haven't invested enough into that, right? I can't comment on how you train athletes because I haven't invested the time to know that. So that's when we keep it shut. All right, a couple of things. As far as empathy is concerned, right? I think it's easy to do any kind of tricks. I think a lot of times when we have athletes on video, we get them to do all these tricks, and we take the same athlete. I did it. We did highlight videos, right? We had athletes, and again, Jeff knows, he was there. Nick knows, like, we're not putting that athlete on film, right? And here's the thing. I'm going to go off on a sidetrack. We judged that athlete because they couldn't squat properly. So, of course, here's a kid comes in, doesn't know how to squat very well, doesn't really know how to work hard like Nate said, and all of a sudden I labeled him a turd. What I don't know is that sport coach just spent a year and a half calling the kid, emailing the kid, going to the kid's house, going to the kid's game, going to the kid's other sport game that he played or she played. Spend all this time to bring someone in that's going to help their team and help the university, and all of a sudden the kid doesn't know how to squat, and I call him a turd. Right? That wasn't fair to me. I didn't have enough invested in that. And I think that's the one thing that we have to understand. This is something from John Maxwell. If you ever heard of this, value all people. I'll go into detail with this. Value all people, praise effort, reward performance. Right? No matter who you're talking to. I think we get that mixed up sometimes. Right? Well, we praise performance. Right? Or we value performance other than maybe we should do it. So I'm going to skip ahead real quick. I labeled them basically the P's, the E's, and the P's again. So when we talk about valuing, again, we're going to talk about people, their perspectives, and whatever platform that we're on, whatever we've been able to, whatever platform that we're able to communicate with those people. When we praise, I don't think it's just the effort. I think, again, there's when you talk about the ease, the effort, the energy, the experience, right? And even our experience is like, listen, this was not a great day, right? We end up getting, we're supposed to do whatever percent, 85% for 5, we did it for 4, that's okay, that's a good experience, we learn from that, let's adjust for next time. And for rewarding, again, I think we get into this performance aspect, right? But I think one thing that we have to understand too is that the progress and the process, and people confuse this with participation trophies, like to reward someone that, hey, listen, you didn't win, but holy crap, you played the whole fourth quarter with 4 fouls, and you had a bum ankle, and that's great experience. That's the process. That's what we're talking about. But you have to understand enough that what that kid is going through, right? You have a kid have a bad day, maybe mom and dad's going through a divorce. And he comes up and you're mad at them because they don't have the same, right? They don't have the same enthusiasm towards your workout. They're not doing your dynamic warm-up with enough vigor, right? So I think it's one of those things that, again, when we reward, I think we still have to, again, reward the process, reward the progress they're making. Because that's what they control. We're trying to control outcomes, right? We're trying to control outcomes too much, and it's not working for us, right? We want to win the game, right? And there's a Little League baseball video that talks about the coach they said he's kidding around talking to kids. The only thing that matters is winning, and right? So what happens when you talk about winning, you talk about performance, you set goals for your kid, right? I got a kid, your goal this year is to make all conference. We're going to do everything we can to make sure you're all conference. You're a junior last year, you're going to your senior year, right? And then all those performance indicators, you get up their max squat, their max bench, their vertical, their speed, everything is improved. What if they're just not that good of a player? So everything you did was for nothing? What are they paying you for? You did everything you could to help that young person. And because they didn't make all conference, it's a failure? Because you set the goal as an outcome that they can't control. What if they have a transfer that came into the conference that's just a beast and they made all conference? right? What if they switch leagues? What if, I don't know. All those factors you don't control, that should be your goal. When you have an athlete say, okay, what do you want to accomplish this year? We have from now till this time before you start your season. What do we want to accomplish? And if it's about winning games, right, and about things that other people are involved in and other variables you can't control, you're wasting your time. Because I know how much time you put with your athletes, and you're not a failure. You know what you're doing. So it wasn't like you put the wrong plan, right? So, make sure that what you can actually control. Okay, we're backwards on accident, so be too excited. Okay, I'm going to skip back and forth here. A couple of things. Make sure you're invested before you interject in their life. I heard this quote: "Be the person that you needed when you were their age." Right? Think about what they need. Think about what you would want to hear. Right? When you were that 14-year-old awkward volleyball player that come in and like, I've never lifted a weight before in my life. Like I'm just here because my mom said I should do this, and she read an article on ACL injuries, and here I am. And then you're gonna demand grit from that person, right? Understand why they're there, right? What did she need? What does that young lady need from you? What does she need from you? Because the whole thing is to get her with the goals. What are you in this profession for if your goals aren't her goals? So just again, be that person. Right? Showing compassion and still demanding investment. I heard this quote again. This thing is a Woody Hayes quote. Anytime that someone gets something they don't deserve, they're less of a person. We know that, right? And I always say, I hope my daughters get everything that they deserve. Right? Some of the things they want, just about everything they need, right? But everything they deserve, good or bad, because it's going to make them a better person, right? So again, that is tough. How do we show compassion, solidarity with our athletes, and still make sure that you know that again, the people that these kids have to understand is that the people that are on their back right now are the people that are always going to have their back, right? Kids nowadays. Anybody that gets on them, those people that get on them all the time, those are people that just can't stand it, can't stand it, can't stand it. Mr. Watts is going to tell me about leadership and being nice to people. He's going to talk to me about grit, right? I don't just leave me alone. Oh, it's not your job to leave them alone. Your job is to make them better. Your job is not to adhere to or to give in to what they want, right? They have enough of that. They have enough of that at home. Sometimes your culture in your gym is different than their culture at home. Your values in your gym may be different from their values at home. Doesn't mean you sacrifice your values. It just means you might have to communicate them a little more with a little more tact. All right. The other thing we want to talk to you about is I got to talk to Coach Clay Arrow, who was I'd never heard of him because he's a high school football coach in Sacramento. But we spoke at this Summit for Transformative Leaders in St. Louis. It was 2 years ago. And Vern Gambetta is one of his, he's tight with Vern Gambetta. He's talking about it. He had four rules. I just listened through. One of them is we, not me. But the no excuses, no messenger, no sympathy groups. And I think that's the one thing that if you have a client or an athlete that misses a workout, who contacts you? Who contacts you? Their parents? Okay, if they're 8, right? All right, yeah, I think their parents, they might not have a cell phone. But again, who's canceling that appointment? Them? It's the same thing when I look at signing day, right? The signing day circus, okay? I'm good with it. Those young people have earned it. I don't care if you're going to Denison or Duke. It doesn't matter. They earned a scholarship or they basically got accepted at that university, and this signing day, they want to make a big deal, right? But the whole thing about which hat I'm going to put on, I'm okay with that. Make fun with it, troll the others. Yeah, I'm good with that. But here's what I like, though. What I would like is I would like all those people to call those coaches up and say, hey, coach, my press conference is in 20 minutes. I just want you to know that I'm not going to your school. I'm going to school B. I appreciate everything you've done for me. Thank you so much. I'm sorry. I wish you the best. Grit. Right? Now you can make a circus because the coach knows. Coach is not going. You're not trolling anybody, right? That's a learning opportunity lost. right? It's a learning opportunity lost. So this is one thing that I keep skipping. I keep hitting this thing by accident. I'm very sorry about that. I'm new to this. So no messengers, no sympathy groups, right? And again, especially if you're in a team environment, when somebody is not performing the way they should be and they get benched, the first thing they're going to talk to is they're going to talk to their parents. They're going to talk to the other. Can you believe me? Can you believe that, coach? Go ahead and Google how many, again, PA, Western PA is a big thing. How many girls basketball coaches that were successful lost their job over the last couple of years? Because parents were not happy that their kids, you deal with this, and you're on the private sector, so you see both sides. You see both sides of this. Guess who they're going to talk to? If you're in the private sector and they got benched, they're going to talk to you and complain about your coach. Guess what you got to do? You don't control that. Right? And you have to understand, too, is that sport performance is one thing, but again, sports skills is another. So one thing that, for a sympathy group, they're going to talk to people. If you get a chance, please watch Coach Frank Martin's video. He's a head basketball coach in South Carolina. He talks about youth sports and sums it up in a way that I don't think anybody else can. Coach Frank Martin, he gets on my Facebook page if I hope we were friends. And again, it's really what sums it up. I'm not going to go through it just because of the sake of time. But again, no messengers. Make sure that that athlete, I don't care if they're paying you or not, make sure that athlete is giving you that information themselves, making sure that they are, any questions they have, any concerns they have, they're addressing it to the right people. Well, she said this. Well, did you talk to her about it? No? There it is. Problem solved. Problem solved. It was a really good video. Anybody read Patrick Lencioni? Oh my goodness. Like, he's the guy. He's the man. 5 dysfunctions of a team. My favorite is 3 signs of a miserable job. But he has a short video about how to just address issues, right? Hey, listen, listen, Mrs. Jones, I know that you're telling all the other parents that our workouts here are not geared for field hockey players and we only train football players. Are you telling other parents that? Oh, you are? Okay, could you stop doing that? Can you tell me why you're asking that? I think it's one of those things that we lost that confrontation because, again, as soon as she hangs up, she's going to post something on Facebook, right? That's kind of, and then we have to be, remember, you are in a field that is going to swim upstream from all the other bull crap that's happening around you. Because as a coach, this is the last profession. The last profession. I know some of you are in private sector and you need to run your business. But this is one of the last things that you can do. You can tell kids to do something they don't want to do. Well, sure, there's other places. No, their manager at McDonald's, they're just going to quit and move back home. Think about it. Coaching is one of those last places where you can demand things of young people that they won't ever demand of themselves. So I think that's one of the things we have to think about. All right. Am I going backwards? I keep hitting this button. I'm sorry. I'm going to put it down in 2 minutes. I want to talk about 4 B's. This is something I got from my pastor. Right? I'm not going to talk about religion. But I think too many times that we talk about culture. Right? This is the culture that I'm going to have. Now, if you're at Westside Barbell, that's a culture, right? That is embedded. But when you're talking about building a culture, this is a mistake I made when I was a coach. I knew what culture I wanted. The problem is, it wasn't up to me. My ego got in the way. It wasn't up to me. That culture was formed by those athletes. And I think too many times we say, this is what we demand here. How many have rules in your gym or philosophy in your gym? You have a website. This is what we believe in, right? Hope so. Okay? If you don't have a mission statement of philosophy, you should. But again, the problem is when you go to the first thing and say, listen, this is the type of people we want here. Right? This is the type of behavior we want. You have to believe in us. I spent so many times trying to convince athletes that worked out in the summer with their personal trainer that my program was the one they should be doing. I just wasted so much time, I lost credibility. Because the one thing that I didn't understand as a young coach was that before they can do anything that you want them, before they can believe in you, they have to feel like they belong. They have to feel like you are part of them, they are part of you. If they walk into a gym and they feel like they don't belong, like there's an outsider, then I don't care how long you talk to them, they're not going to do what you ask them to do. They're not going to believe in it. They're going to go through the motions. So it's one of those things of making sure that athletes feel like this is your program. Now, it doesn't mean they have to be entitled. When I interviewed Chris Doyle, who's the head strength coach at the University of Iowa, one of the things he said as a strength coach is he had to reverse the recruiting process when he got in as freshman, right? We love you, we want you to come here, we want you to come here, please come here, please come here. Oh, you're here, now you're like everybody else, you're going to have to work. But at no point do those athletes feel like they didn't belong to that program, right? And there's a program that consistently overachieves, I think, when you look at if you're in college athletics. So before they can do all these things, they got to feel like they belong first. All right, so when we cultivate what we control, we talk about success. You're talking about if you tell, and I'll go through this really quickly, but if you tell an athlete, this is what you need to be successful, you just define success for them. How do you know what successful is? If you're dealing with a 10-year-old, success for them might be doing really well in Fortnite. There's people who know what 10 is. That's crazy. Yeah. If you don't, you don't have a 10-year-old. That's what success is. Success might be just going to school without getting beat up, right? You can't define success. You can't tell me what I need to be successful, right? My success is determined at home at the dinner table. That's my people, right? So I think it's one of those things you have to make sure, be careful about defining success for people that might not share your same views. Here are 3 things that I want to talk about. I'll probably make people mad here, but that's okay. Right? I'm not trying to win the argument, I'm trying to win people, but I think this has to be, there's 3 things right there. Culture might be one, but trustworthiness, mental toughness, building relationships. I think when people talk about that, it's one more thing that coaches have been forced to do to validate their own worth. That's hard to hear. That was hard for me. What I did, I talked about mental toughness. When really, I don't know if I really controlled that. Here's the thing about trustworthiness, right? Number one, I want someone to be trustworthy, right? So what am I going to do? I'm going to be trustworthy. Well, guess what? Right? You're working your butt off to be trustworthy, right? Nick comes in, he's my assistant, he's going to be trustworthy. Right? He does everything he's supposed to do, and guess what? No matter what he does, I don't trust him. I don't know why. I just don't trust him. Did he work? He spent all that time trying to be trustworthy. He's not trustworthy to me. Because he doesn't determine it. I do. So I'm trying to build all this trust with athletes. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. I might be, thank you. I had athletes not trust me because I was white. Where they grew up and what they've been involved in, that's just not them, no matter what I did. So all what we can't control, though, is our integrity, doing the right things, being a person of our word, make sure we say what we mean what we say. But don't talk about trying to be, thank you, Nick, don't talk about trying to be trustworthy, because that's a byproduct of your behavior. The other thing is mental toughness, right? Building a relationship goes along with that, right? Building relationships means, I'm going to try to build a relationship with you, but guess what? If that athlete doesn't trust you, they don't like you, they don't want to be part of this, they don't even want to be there, no matter how hard you try to build a relationship, it's not going to work. So do your thing. You got to admit that there's going to be some athletes you're just not going to connect with. The last thing is mental toughness, and I think it's very important, especially in this internet age, and it goes along all lines. Here's the thing about mental toughness. Let's talk about it. First of all, can you define it? What is mental toughness? Right? These are rhetorical, right? I'm sure we can have an open session, but rhetorical. What is mental toughness? Think about what mental toughness is for you. Now, is there a difference between mental toughness and physical toughness? Thank you. Is there a difference between mental toughness and physical toughness? Is physical toughness like I don't bruise disease? I don't know what that what is that? Can I define it? And if I can define it, then I can measure it, right? If I can say what mental toughness is, then I can have a test to say someone is mentally tough or not because of those qualities. Okay? If I'm trying to increase someone's vertical jump, right? I can pre-test them. I have the training program that involves, obviously, whatever, fixing anterior pelvic tilt, making sure I'm generating more force, more posterior chain strength, whatever it may be. I measure it, I train it, I measure it again, I know if it works. Mental toughness. Make sure that, again, it's not just obedience. If I say, listen, we're going to do the toughest workout we've ever done, right? Everyone's going to grab a 45-pound plate, and we're going to lunge walk to Granville. The first thing you do right now is say, okay, do I have to? And every single one of your athletes, when you do some crazy, we're going to make you tough, we're going to do something that makes you tougher, we're going to do wall sits and stack plates on and have people jump up on your knees. The first thing you're thinking about is, what happens if I don't do this? Right? You give some crazy workout that is extremely hard, that takes a lot of time. They're going to ask, do I have to do this? Is it helping them? And if you weren't there, if you wrote it on a piece of paper and say, here's your workout for the day, would they do it? Would they do it if someone else was there with them? Would they do it if they were by themselves? Are you sure you're developing mental toughness? Because if you can't measure it, how do you know you're developing it? There was a high school kid in New York, died because they had the log, and they were doing the sitting down and pressing over. The log slipped from his hands, because they're on a field, hit him in the head, he died. And here's the one thing I heard from Dan John, right? He comes in summer, and Nick and I go and visit him often. If you want to do a Navy SEAL workout, join the Navy. As a former Marine, I could say that, right? This cute stuff and just trying to get a bond and get them competitive and toughness. Understand, you got to tell me that, okay, if I get a kid and he can wrestle a towel out of my hands, he's really going to hit free throws, right, when it really matters. Are you sure it transfers? Are you sure it transfers? All right? So that's the one thing to think about. Again, that's just my opinion. I don't know if we really worry about getting those kids. Now, confidence, yes. Something that can be developed, and it's really not measurable. But just be careful about what you think you're actually developing. So Nick is going to email you this, right? So this is one out of Vernon Gambet's book. I think it probably sums it up the best as far as where we're at. And I have one more quality that I'll talk about, but I got to finish up here. I don't want to be that's rude to the other speakers if I go over. But I just want to finish up with a couple things with authenticity. Right? I have a couple of things here that I'll finish it up with. We as coaches have an obligation to get the best out of the people that we work with. That's what we're here to do. I think the one thing that I'll leave you with this is that be proud of yourself that you've stuck with it. I did not. I bailed on the profession. I weighed my options. I prayed on it. I couldn't do it anymore. Right? Anybody that sticks with it. Anybody that has a gym over 3 years now, I'm seeing Mike and Gina, I'm seeing Pat, I'm seeing all these people. Good for you. Because again, it is hard. And here's why it's hard. That this profession, sports performance, strength and conditioning, I don't care if it's the private sector or not, we have not figured out a way to quantifiably and objectively measure whether you are a good strength coach or not. Who's the best strength coach in here? If we had a test, how would we find out? What test would you have? How many clients you have? What their max numbers are? How many D1 players you have? What if they were just really good players and they came to your gym? You got lucky. If we're going to take credit for all the D1 players we have at our gym, then every player in our gym that didn't go D1, we got to take the blame for them. Right? It's tough because, again, there's no quantifiable measures. How do you know? When I left, the new guy came in. How do I know if I was better than him or he's better than me? I have two gyms right next to each other. Which one's better? That's the problem that we have. That is one of the reasons why you need to have an unpaid internship to be a strength coach and make a job making $5,000 a year. Right? Because there's no way to measure, so I'm not going to pay you more because I don't know if you're doing a better job or not. The only thing that happens, the only thing that can happen is that when we have people that, whether they're in the school district or whether they're in a university or in the private sector, they move from coaches to administrators. The problem is, name an athletic director at a D1 school that understands anything about strength and conditioning. Anybody in your school district can tell me? You tell your philosophy of strength and conditioning? Anybody in your school district can say if you're full crap or not? So why are they going to pay you a lot of money? They don't even know what you're talking about. They don't even know what you do. That's their challenge. That's our challenge. We have to get people that, again, if I own gyms, now all of a sudden I own a gym, I can hire people that make a difference. I'm not trying to poo-poo on this profession because I gave everything I had. I just couldn't sustain it anymore. So my respect level for you is through the roof. But we, as a profession, have to understand that there are things that are out of our control. And what we do on a day-to-day basis means more than anything else. Be the person that those athletes need. I don't care if they're 10, 20, or 70. Be the person that they need. All right? And I don't want to go over. I'm sorry I didn't finish through everything. I do this every time. I'm sorry. It's just poor planning. I just have a lot to say. And again, if you ever need anything, my contact info. See, there's this stuff, and all this stuff. There's stuff here. There's circles and squares. And there's all kind of stuff I was going to talk about. But again, this when Nick says, it'll make sense, right? And then hopefully you can go through that. But again, if you ever need anything, my contact information, everything that I've done on Lead FTS is, again, the coaches clinic. I have a bunch of webinars, everything from auto-regulatory training to like perform a board press for an athlete, like everything in between. I had the opportunity to do that. I have a whole bunch of podcasts that I've done. If you ever need a hold of me, again, with Instagram or with Twitter, you can get on me, and my email's up there too as well. I apologize for going over time. Thank you so much. And if you ever need anything, like I said, to me, I'm not trying to win the argument, I'm trying to win the people, right? And again, you are my people, and I appreciate everything you do. Because you know who's going to make this situation better, our society better, is people like you. Because you're demanding of things that other people can't. And that's what's important. So I appreciate it. Thank you.